As you can tell by the title of this video, I wanted to compare the newly introduced and released Canon C200 to the iPhone X. The reason behind this is that the iPhone X can do 4K 60p. Additionally, it can do 1080p at 240 frames per second. That's something the Canon C200 cannot do. I want to showcase how far computational photography has come in such a short period of time and how well it stacks up to cinema camera type of footage. This is just a fun little video in comparing the footage. So without any further ado, let's see what I can do with the iPhone X footage to see if I can match it up to the C200. Let's hop into this. The majority of this footage was shot at 4K 60p. This first shot here is a low light test of the iPhone X. You can see it's really grainy and it's just not at strength. Hopping over to the C200, you can see it's really much more crisp, but that's to be expected considering the sensor size difference between the two cameras. I tried to switch the angle here and hop into trying to use the TV to light my son's face, and it's still really noisy and unusable in my opinion. Taking a look at the C200, however, it looks fantastic. It looks just great. Now I want to test the 120p function. This is 1080p at 120 frames per second. The iPhone X does a really good job at capturing some slow motion footage, but it's noisy. Hopping over to the C200, you can see it just does a much better job. The iPhone X is not meant for low light shooting, even though it has a fast aperture. Moving on, the footage is a little noisy in my opinion. Still very usable because what I'm focusing on is sharp. Hopping over to the C200, doing the same exact movement. It looks much cleaner around the edges and everything. It's not as noisy. It just looks really great, and I am fanboying over the C200. Now, moving into normal lighting conditions, the iPhone X does a fantastic job at capturing some slow motion footage and really resolving the data in the scene really well, giving that really smooth look to the liquid. I really think it does a fantastic job and blows out the background significantly well. Moving along to the C200, however, you can see it just does a better job. But it is the comparison is much more close, just from what I'm looking at here. The C200 does a good job at slowing down the liquid as well and resolving everything. And you can see the backlights back there are flickering a little bit. And that's something the iPhone X doesn't do because it has anti-flicker on. Moving on to the sugar. You can see the sugar is not as resolved and the particles are not as separated as they're going to be when you take a look at the C200 footage. You can see the individual particles being kind of pushed in there. And if you want to pause it, you can take a look at the differences between the two. They kind of blend together on the iPhone X. Here, they kind of go into the coffee and you can see the individual sugar cubes going in there. Here's some slow motion footage panning around a rose. There's some noise in the scene, but very clean in my opinion. I may be wrong here. Feel free to drop a comment down below letting me know that I am wrong, but I think this just looks fantastic for a smartphone. Hopping into the C200, it's much cleaner, but that's to be expected. You can see the rose here has much more detail and looks just really great. Now let's get into comparing outdoor scenes. Here I want to kind of measure the dynamic range between the two cameras. You can see the sky is just blown out on the iPhone X, and there's a bit of moire going on the roof. It's usable footage if you're filming somebody walking on the street or whatever, but the sky is just way too blown out for my taste. Moving on to the C200, you can see that it's doing a great job at resolving all of the footage and doing a fantastic job at minimizing the moire on the roof. And the dynamic range is just fantastic. You can see all the different colors and everything like that. I don't know what YouTube is doing to the compression here, but the sky, there's no banding or anything. And this is just MP4 shot in the normal profile, so BT709. On this bridge scene, you can see the iPhone X does a really good job at the dynamic range change between the sky, the rocks, and the bridge and the water. It's resolving all the data extremely well. If you look at the grass up in the top right corner, it's all separated and clean. Hopping over to the C200, you would be hard pressed to tell the difference between these two example footages. I mean, the rocks are a little bit more detailed, the sky has a little bit more blue in it with the C200, but with internet compression, I mean, it would be very difficult for me to tell the difference between the two. A similar scene here is recording this waterfall. It's freezing over. The iPhone X does a fantastic job at resolving all the moving parts with the branches and the leaves and the water. It's coming through crystal clear. Hopping into the C200, again, it would be difficult to tell the difference between the two. It's doing almost exactly the same and performing really is the same as the iPhone X. It's just hard to tell a difference between the two. Hopping into a similar scene here, the grass with the iPhone X it's a little mushed together if you look into the thick of it, but you can see that each individual blade of grass has its own presence in this scene, and the sky is being resolved really well. C200 is just doing a better job because there's a lot more moving parts and it's resolving this scene much better. It's just the processing power with the C200. Again, to be expected, it is a $7,500 cinema camera. And that about does it. So what did you think about this comparison between the footage captured on the iPhone X and the C200? Did the iPhone X perform better than you thought? How about the C200? Did it perform worse? Considering its price tag, I mean, it is $7,500 at the time of this video for the kit without the lens. I think computational photography and videography has come a very long way, and the technology that's built in to today's modern smartphone is just fantastic. You don't necessarily even have to have an iPhone to do certain things with it. As long as you light your scene correctly, keep in mind the composition, and not push your technology beyond its limits, you can capture some fantastic stuff on a smartphone. And that's just what it is today. And I foresee it getting better and better as time goes on. Essentially, I want to share with you the best camera a person can use is the one that they have on them. And usually your smartphone's on you 100% of the time, so you may be limited to capturing stuff with your smartphone. And that's okay, especially with how awesome they are today. I really enjoyed making this. It was fun, and it's fun to see and appreciate a cinema camera, especially when you consider, dynamic range and all types of stuff. Well, that about does it for me in this one. If you like this video, please feel free to give me a thumbs up. If you didn't, you know what to do. Thank you for taking the time to watch. I'm Tomas, and I will catch you in the next one.